After they argue the case, they would seek some interim relief for 4 weeks or 6 weeks, and they can then go and approach Supreme Court directly instead of waiting for certificate of Supreme High Court that this is a fit case for decision by Supreme Court of India. In the past practice was that once the Supreme Court, High Court gives you the certificate, then your matter was as good as automatically admitted. There are cases where it was not admitted, notwithstanding the certificate by the High Court, but you could say in 99% cases that was accepted as enough for admission of the matter. So that is Article 132. Then we have similar provisions under Article 133 and under 134. 134 would cover criminal matters. 133 is also by certificate regarding substantial question of law as to interpretation of Constitution. That is 133(2). So these are the various provisions, and then of course the main source of lawyers' bread and butter, Article 136. Under Article 136, you can approach High Court by challenging the order of any High Court. But I must point out that jurisdiction of Supreme Court is not confined to the challenge to the orders of High Court. It also covers other tribunals. As a matter of practice, we may not challenge the tribunal's order directly in the Supreme Court, because by and large such a petition would be dismissed on the ground that you first approach the High Court. This happened yesterday, for example, in that bail matter. They said you first go to High Court. That was not a writ petition, but it can happen in the writ petition also. But there are cases, reported judgments, where if you can argue that it is futile to approach High Court. For example, you have an issue, say under tax law, and particular High Court has already taken a decision against you, and there is a reference from income tax authorities also. So instead of going to the High Court and taking second dismissal, you go to the Supreme Court and say, sir, this approaching the High Court has become meaningless, kindly hear me. So once in a blue moon, in a rare case, they do entertain such petition. So 136 is not confined to High Court, it covers other tribunals also. Then I should have mentioned one more thing. Under Article 132, which is also appellate jurisdiction of the Supreme Court, where if you have acquittal from the trial court in a criminal case and High Court reverses it and gives you death penalty, then you have a right of appeal as a matter of right under Article 134 of the Constitution of India. Similarly, 134A is where Supreme Court withdraws on its own motion. It can withdraw the cases from other courts. 135 provides that it has the same jurisdiction as it was in the case of federal court. Many of you may not remember the federal court. There was a federal court during the British rule. There was no Supreme Court of India at that time. So there was federal court, and beyond the federal court, you could go to Privy Council. So now today it is very academic, because after 60-70 years of independence and constitution, hardly anything of federal court remains. I have just mentioned it for the sake of it. Then with Article 136, the Supreme Court also has powers of review, just like High Court, under Article 137. You can file review petition under Supreme Court rules, read with Article 137 of the Constitution of India. Then Supreme Court has created one more jurisdiction for itself. All these articles which I have mentioned so far are part of the Constitution. But in last decade, Supreme Court has created this new jurisdiction called curative petition. If your petition is dismissed, your review petition is dismissed under Article 137, and if you still think that you have not received the justice and a serious error has taken place, they do hear you under the curative petition. Now don't look for any article in the Constitution mentioning curative petition, because there is none. In the judgment of this Sonia Rupa Hura, I think, Rupa Ashok Hora, they created this new jurisdiction immediately in the present context. For example, that power is being used to decide the question of gay people, homosexuals. Homosexuals claim, Delhi High Court decided in their case that relevant provisions of IPC and CRPC should be so read that the homosexuality between consenting adults is decriminalized. Practically speaking, it is decriminalized. Supreme Court reversed that judgment of Delhi High Court. Review has been dismissed, and now Supreme Court has taken up that case which is working of curative petition. And they want to re-examine this judgment whether gays are entitled to sexual freedom under the various provisions of Constitution or not. So for example, in the working of Supreme Court judgments also, sometimes the anomalies do arise. Last year or maybe year before, in the context of election law, Supreme Court said that transgender should be mentioned as third category. Now there are men, women and transgender. Once you accept them as man and as a third gender with man and woman, then you cannot negate the fact that they are also citizens of India. And if they are citizens of India, obviously they will have their fundamental rights. If I as a heterosexual have certain rights in my bedroom, why should a homosexual not have it? Now, once the Supreme Court on the one hand said that treats transgenders as a third gender, and then you say homosexuality is a crime. So just see, I am just illustrating a situation where curative petition jurisdiction will be rightly invoked. Which judgment is correct? If I am a transgender person, you treat me as a human being, you treat me as a citizen of India, then the fundamental rights are divided into two parts again. There are rights which are available to citizens, there are rights which are available to human beings as such. So for example, Article 14 is not confined to citizens. It is not confined to living beings. Even corporate can raise it. So these two judgments will have to be reconciled, and in my submission, Supreme Court has done the right thing in entertaining the curative petition on this aspect. There is an interactive section maybe at the end of it if you so desire, but I am just running too fast these articles, because after all these articles are written in every textbook. So you can read Asim's book or any book, you will find them. But what I mean is, in case you have any question in the middle also, please feel free to ask it, because I am not dilating on the in depth on the respective articles. I am just mentioning them. Then there is Article 139A, under which Supreme Court can transfer the cases to itself from various high courts. Issues arise before one or more high courts, and Supreme Court thinks that this should not happen and there will be conflicting or contradictory opinions. We better decide once and forever. This can also happen in the case of individuals. If you remember, in case of well-known painter M.F. Hussain, There were criminal complaints in various courts in India. And he was feeling persecuted because the whole issue had become communal, Hindu versus Muslim, and his paintings were taken as offensive to Hindu goddess and all that. Bharat Mata in nude and this and that. So ultimately Supreme Court withdrew his cases to itself. Even I at one stage thought of it. When I was counsel for Osho Rajneesh, he had this famous book, From Sex to Super Consciousness. And all kind of fanatic Hindus who had not read the book, they would say he has offended my religious feelings, and cases were filed in various courts in India. Because the book is not confined to the source of publication. So I can read Bertrand Russell's book in India and say that he has offended my sense of being Hindu or Christian and file a case in Delhi High Court or Gujarat High Court or wherever. So everybody had a license to file cases everywhere in India. But then fortunately those cases got wound up and we did not have to go that far. Then there is Article 141, which you are all aware, under which the only provision is that all the judgments of Supreme Court are binding on all. Not only on high courts, on other tribunals, on citizens, on everybody. You can't argue against Article 141. Of course, you can question the validity of a judgment by 1,000 ways as a creative lawyer, but you cannot directly attack Article 141. Then we have Article 142, which is specially only for Supreme Court. Under Article 142, Supreme Court can invoke extraordinary power under the category of something which requires doing complete justice, but which is not specifically covered by any law. Now, Article 142 is not like a blanket check where if you don't have any remedy under any law, you go to Supreme Court under Article 142 and say, oh, do this. No, not like that. Even under Article 142, Supreme Court will not do or decide anything which is against the existing statute. They cannot go against the law. Supreme Court they may be, but they are bound by law. So even Article 142 does not permit them to go outside the law, but they can still take some liberties. Some say marital disputes, or say waiving the penalty where minimum sentence is provided by the law. In a creative manner, they have tinkered with the laws in that fashion without directly violating it. Then finally, there is Article 143, under which President of India can seek opinion of the Supreme Court of India on any matter where he thinks that opinion of Supreme Court is necessary and the clarity is not there either in the government or that there is no parliamentary provision on it. President can seek the opinion of the Supreme Court of India. For example, there is a famous Supreme Court's opinion regarding this collegium business in the earlier avatar. Yeah, presidential reference number 1. Yeah, thank you. So these are, broadly speaking, jurisdictional provisions of the Supreme Court of India. Most of you may be aware of them. I have just ran through the gamut with the hope that if you have any questions, you can raise them even now. Now, as far as practice is concerned, I must say it is a very subjective and individual experience. I have been practicing law in Supreme Court for 19 years. I was practicing in this court till June 97. On 1st July 97, I shifted to Delhi, and now I am trying to come back. Over the years, I remember that Supreme Court jurisdiction has varied a lot. In 19 years itself, I have seen the complexion of Supreme Court changing almost every year. Every year, young people come to Supreme Court bar, and every year, old people come to Supreme Court bench. Most of the judges are in their late 50s or early 60s or about to retire. So you can imagine that their perspectives vary all the time. Then second thing that is happening is that every Chief Justice thinks that he has all the powers on earth. So for example, there right now this actual petition is pending, more than one petition, regarding designation of a lawyer as a senior advocate. That practice has varied with every Chief Justice. Kapadia said, I'll take only 2 lawyers every year. The successor said, we'll have a vote of all the judges. Then there's a committee of 5. So even in such a matter, which is an in-house matter, it is not doing justice to some litigant, or in some case, there are variations. Then again, for example, as far as working of 136 is concerned, Article 136, as I mentioned earlier, jokes are on the one side, directly approaching the court is on the other side. I remember years back, when I was at the High Court, we had such a meeting in Tagore Hall, and Mr. Soli Sorabji came to speak. Soli Sorabji, as you know, is one of the most successful lawyers. He was Solicitor General, Attorney General and everything. Even he said that Article 136 petition is a lottery. So, what I mean is that it's not lottery in the sense that it's so totally mercurial and uncertain, but it varies from judge to judge. For example, I will not name him, but even today there are judges in Supreme Court, at least 2 of them, where they have this approach that if it is a dispute between say, industrial laborer and employer, they have to decide in favor of labor only. There are judges who think if there is a dispute between tenant and landlord, they have to decide in favor of tenant only. So it does vary. The positive side of this is that if it is so uncertain, anybody may as well take a chance, why not? What's the harm? At the most, they will dismiss your matter. They are not going to hang you. So anybody of you who is thinking of going there, don't be deterred, just shoot it. Nothing worse can happen. So, this is very broad side of Article 136. 32 I have already mentioned. As far as other aspect of practice is concerned, right now there are 3 categories of advocates in Supreme Court. If you are thinking of shifting there, there are advocates on record. There is an examination for it, and you can appear in that examination after 5 years of practice. Earlier there used to be it had some about 5 papers. One of the papers was regarding accountancy. And accountancy not being the main subject of many lawyers, many people used to fail. But in last 2-3 years, they have removed that subject. As a result, now every year, in the old days, every year 5, 10, 15 people will be successful in the exam of AOR. Now 50, 60, 70 people are. So if you are a young lawyer with the practice of 5, 7, 10 years, if you are thinking of shifting there, you can take the exam of AOR, and it is a very good stepping stone to start the practice. Because in Supreme Court, you can file a petition only through an AOR. If you are not an AOR, you cannot file any petition in the Supreme Court. So If you don't have an independent work of your own, at least somebody will come to you, મારી આ પિટિશનમાં સહી કરી દો. So, એના 2000 રૂપિયા મળે છે. So, you can start like that, it's very simple. Then there is a category of non-AOR. There are separate associations for each of these categories, and they are always fighting. So this non-AOR is a category which is not advocate on record. Now, advocate on record is not confined to filing of matters. Advocate on record can very well argue cases. Similarly, non-advocate on record, though he cannot file the papers, he can argue the case only. So AOR has dual advantage. He can draft, he can file, he can argue. And non-AOR can only draft and argue, but he cannot file. Then you know there are senior advocates, which are mostly designated by the various high courts where from they have come. And Supreme Court also designates every year a few of them, 2, 3, 5 every year almost. So this is a three category of advocates. As you know, senior advocate cannot draft the pleadings, cannot see the... Why are you smiling? I am just mentioning the book knowledge. In practice, it does happen that people do some drafting. But let me tell you, my personal practice, I was designated in 1995. Since then, I have not drafted a single petition.